both of those vehicles in a massive V8. Drive around the block and you'll watch the gas tank go like this versus an EV truck. You come home, you plug it in, and you forget about it till the next morning. I drove by an EA station. There were 5 queuing to wait for charging. That's going to hurt EV adoption. The EV experience, I think the first time driving one just kind of grabbed a hold of me. I don't see myself ever buying another internal combustion car. Let's put it that way.
Hello and welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. What is it like owning multiple EVs? Well, today my guest Michael has owned everything from Tesla, Polestar, Ford, Rivian, and more, and we're going to hone in about the multi-EV ownership experience. If you are wondering what it's like to own an electric vehicle or are just curious about what it's like owning multiple, this episode is just for you. So, Michael, you have owned a Ford Lightning, Model S Plaid, EQS AMG, R1T, Cybertruck Cyberbeast, R1S, Porsche Macan. Your Polestar 1 was just in our recent Out of Spec detailing video. You've owned a bunch of other cars, have a 911, TRX, Raptor, G-Wagons. You have some extreme experience with cars. Kind of jumping right into this, before I started filming, we were having this conversation about you really sticking with EVs. Why is it, do you think, that you've kind of slowly pushed yourself away from as many gas vehicles to really focusing on all of the electric cars that you have?
Well, as someone who grew up with the whole Motorhead and ICE background, that was where we went into as car enthusiasts. And I guess it was a few years back, decided to explore something different, something new. And the EV experience, I think the first time driving one just kind of grabbed a hold of me, and I got really into the technology behind it. The acceleration you can't argue with the EVs versus internal combustion vehicles. So I think that was what kind of grabbed me initially. But the watching the development and progress that keeps seeming to go on with every new iteration or new release of a new EV is exciting and interesting to me.
Awesome. Which one has been the most, I think, unique to you? I mean, so many. It's
the most unique to me. I would say the Tesla Cybertruck, the Cyberbeast, is just it's such a unique vehicle. Whether people love it or hate it, the technology involved in it was steer by wire and rear steer and just everything that went into the development of that vehicle. It's very cool. At the same time, the Rivians are just, they really speak to folks, including my wife and myself as R1T and R1S owners. So those would be my top of the group. Obviously, Model S Plaid is a fun straightaway car. It's the modern day muscle car. If you want to stop at a stoplight, go from Plaid 0 to 60 and watch your face just go backwards.
right. Now, on to the topic of electric trucks, right? You've owned the TRX, owned the Raptor, now kind of sliding over to the R1T and the Cyberbeast.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between electric powerful trucks and gas-powered powerful trucks, what are some of the advantages or disadvantages you see between the two?
Well, obviously the torque in electric vehicles is pretty instant, whereas in a combustion truck, you're going to have that spool up and build up of power. At the same time, some of the joys we get out of the old ICE trucks, the noise, the theater of it, kind of goes away with an EV. The other thing that's been stated a million times with trucks, electric trucks, is the towing is just not there yet. It's one of the downsides. Not that I did a ton of towing with a Ford Gen 1 Ford Raptor or a TRX. They were more just excitement, off-road vehicles that I really loved. Although I will say the Rivians off-road are, in my opinion, make those vehicles outdated.
And I guess between that, what makes it outdated to you in the sense of gas versus electric? Is it?
I think the configurability, the software of being able to enable the different drive modes, the different ride height suspensions. Those other vehicles, the TRX comes on an air suspension. There's not a whole lot of play that you can do with it. The Ford Raptor, while it has some great, amazing shocks, it is what it is. It's dialed in. You can't change that the modes a whole as much as you can on, I would say, on the EV side of things.
Interesting. It sounds a bit like the electric trucks on the high performance side are much more configurable and much more daily drivable than the
Oh,
TRX and Raptor. Is that
for sure. I mean, I think for instance, I can drive an R1T anywhere. It's a big truck, but it's nowhere near as massive as a TRX or a Ford Raptor. The other side is with both of those vehicles and the massive V8s and the turbochargers that go into them. You drive around the block and you'll watch the gas tank go like this versus an an EV truck. You don't see in the local areas, you don't see the burn rate or the expense to run them as much as you do with an EV with home charging and being able to top off.
I'm glad you mentioned that home charging. With all of the EVs you have, again, like R1T Cybertruck,
Mhm.
R1S, Macan EV, you have the Polestar one. What is your home charging situation like?
Well, I float between the north, which is in Pennsylvania, and the south, which is in Alabama, the Gulf Shores area, and we do have multiple home chargers at each location. I'm very fortunate. I'm not the typical use case or person that has that, but we have the ability to do that, and so that's kind of how we've done it.
What system do you use for charging?
Um, the ones I have here at the home, internally in the garages, I have the Tesla wall chargers. I have an older regular Tesla one, and then I have the universal charger. And then outside, we have a Rivian wall unit as well.
Awesome.
Place in Alabama had the Ford Lightning Pro Power Station.
Yeah.
Tom Malogny has that you always see behind him on State of Charge. That has the big plug-in, and there's also a Tesla Universal one down there as well.
Awesome. So you have quite a bit of an experience with all of them. I know people tend to go for the Tesla universal charger. I think in terms
Mhm.
of price and configurability, it and use, it serves its purpose really well. But yeah, I imagine all of those cars having to charge charge those. It's got to be uh, a pretty fun activity having to move them around.
There's a rotation method. I've always been a car collector, and I've always had a pretty large fleet, so to speak. So I tend to rotate vehicles to make sure that they get as much love as the other ones, so to
Mhm.
speak. So, and movement, and it's never good for cars to sit forever. So I do try and rotate them around a little bit.
Nice. What's your highest mileage EV that you currently have?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm probably going to say the Tesla Model S Plaid. I think that's probably around 13, 14,000.
Nice. Yeah, that well, your experience with that is your Model S Plaid. I mean, when did you get it? Trying to think of in terms of market.
I'm trying to think. I got it about 3 years ago. It's
Okay,
2022. So I think I got it at the end of 21, beginning of 22.
nice. Do you typically purchase, finance, or like lease? What's your typical?
I tend to be a purchaser, and I know the EVs take terrible depreciations. Trust me, I've been through it multiple times. That's one of the reasons why I do tend to hang on to some of them. But I have gotten hit on the resale value, particularly the Mercedes EQS took a terrible hit. That was a horrible investment.
Ooh,
Um, and I didn't love the car, so that made me want to get out of it a little bit.
yeah.
It just wasn't for me.
Can you
But
talk about more of that experience? Why you didn't think the EQS AMG was for
um,
you?
I felt like I for myself I'm a taller guy. I felt the roof line was a little lower. I thought I could live with it, but over time, I kind of just always felt like a little enclosed on it. Not everybody's 6'4", so you're not going to have that experience that I may have in the vehicle. I also felt it drove bigger. It drove really big. It had rear wheel steering, which is really awesome in a tight parking lot. However, the back end felt really super heavy. Anytime you went around a corner, it kind of felt like it felt more of a boat going around a corner than I
Mm,
expected it to be, especially with the AMG versions, because I've had experience with Mercedes AMG for years from G Wagons and S Classes and SLs, and they just seem to do it. But I don't think the performance divisions of AMG or M have figured out what their role's going to be in EVs. It used to be tune up the motors, put on like a new breather or charger, and better brakes and suspension and handling. And it seems to me like they're still trying to figure out, okay, what is our performance division of EVs? What are they going to do to make the EV different than the regular EV version?
right. And I imagine for you, with all from the Model S Plaid to the Cyber Beast to the R1T, the the amount of 0 to 60s you've had, and
Yes.
the amount of torque between it, I imagine the EQS AMG wasn't any surprise. It was just,
It actually, like, it is one of the craziest ones when you do the race start.
okay.
It has the most theatrics of any of them, from when you hit the brake and the pedal and you're kind of getting it into launch control. You'll feel this pulsing vibration almost from the wheels, and the seatbelt like
Right.
grabs you,
Yeah.
and then it goes. And so from a theatrical standpoint, it's violent, and it's entertaining. It it accelerates very quickly, but not to the level of a Model S Plaid or say an R1T or a Cybertruck. But it has its little unique quirks to it.
Do you notice the difference between? I'm sure you do. You notice the difference between the Model S Plaid and the other electric vehicles and their
Mhm.
0 to 60 times in torque. But has the Model S Plaid like ruined any of that for you?
That's a great statement, and yes, to a degree, it has. Um,
Okay.
I think I think there's this sense of when you get into EVs, the when you first start doing like launch controls or 0 to 60s, and you're like just blown away, and you take out every friend you have in the car or family member and go, "All right, hold on, I'm going to let go," and you do it. And then as time goes on, I think we kind of get over it. I don't know if I obviously do it with every new vehicle I get just to
Mhm.
see what that one can do, but
Right.
it's not like it used to be. It used to be I'd like stoplight to stoplight. You would kind of do it just for fun, but
Yeah.
no, I've kind of like looking for a little different stuff now. I think the EV manufacturers are going to have to get beyond the let's see who can do it faster, because I think that wears off after time.
Right. Yeah, we see so many EVs with crazy 0 to 60 times. Of course, the Model S Plaid. Now we have the Taycan Turbo S Y-Shack. We
Yeah.
have the Lucid Sapphire. We have Ram-Matz Navera and R1T Quad Gen 2 Cyber Beast. Everyone's got under 2.6 seconds at this point. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
it's
I
got to
honestly
differentiate
think
itself.
it's not something you're going to want to do repetitively. I
Right.
know people in the EV community who's like, you do one or two launches and they're getting sick to their stomach. So like, it's great to have, but I don't think it's a necessary use case for every EV.
Mhm. And on that topic of things that differentiate EVs, software is a big part of
Mhm.
electric vehicles today. Jordan, from our out of spec team, software is like a huge part of the EV experience for him. For you, how important is the software experience?
Hugely important. And
Okay.
it factors completely into my buying decisions. It's one of the reasons why I loved the Ford Lightning when I first got it. And it was really cool. It was like, okay, here's the first EV that I've had, and it's a truck,
Mhm.
and it's got all this storage space. But I found the software really, after getting the Model S Plaid a few
Uh,
months after that, and going from the Tesla software, every time I would get back in the Lightning, I would be, oh my God, this is really bad. I didn't know it was bad because it was the only thing I knew at that point. But once I got into Tesla and then later into Rivian, and see how well software can be integrated by I want to say these new manufacturers like Tesla and Rivian that are software focused and that defined vehicles. It's amazing the integration that can be done and how badly others are doing it currently. And that's going to be, I think, a real differentiator down the road. Continue to be down the road.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I drove a Model 3 the day before yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and just driving my R1T, it's a good software experience. And then I try the Model 3, and I'm like, oh, this is like a lot smoother.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I get back in my R1T, and I'm like, wow, Tesla really is ahead of the software game as as a
Yeah.
whole. So I can imagine, even in my R1T, which is a little better in terms of software, getting from the Lightning to the Model S Plaid and then back to the Lightning, it's like, oh, you could definitely notice the differences.
Oh my goodness, yes. And I'm the same way because it's like I look at it like when it comes to the software and tuning and all the rest of it, Tesla's here, and then I think Rivian's kind of like one B, and then everybody else is way down the list. I mean, it's interesting that they've gotten so good at it. I mean, obviously Tesla's had a really long time to incorporate it, and I know Wasim and the Rivian guys are constantly adding features. From when I took my delivery of my R1T in December of 23, the truck versus what it was and versus what it is today is night and day. It's amazing the amount of software changes that can be made when the company's committed to that.
I guess outside of some of the software defined packages that automakers are offering, what else do you tend to look for? Because, right, the Porsche Macan, I think, kind of what you own right now, kind of
Mhm.
stands out among the Rivians and Teslas that you have.
Mhm.
I guess specifically the Macan. What made you pick that?
I'd always liked having I guess a smaller, more around town vehicle that, you can just run errands in. You don't have to worry so much about a parking space, that was comfortable, that I could road trip. And when I did road trip it charges extremely fast. And that does go into one of the things that I'm starting to really look for in EVs now. And I mentioned this recently to a friend on X, was that the one thing that I do think that Porsche and Mercedes is better at than the other guys, the Rivians, the Teslas, and so forth, is I really feel like their um, guessometer or range estimates are more accurate. They're more to the letter of what it says it is. I had a trip recently with the Macan where I did 230 miles in the Macan, um, and it was below 20 degrees, extremely windy, um, and the en route planner was telling me that I would arrive home at like 5%. I arrived home at 9%. They tend to exceed their range estimates. I
Mhm.
also feel like they're pretty spot on as they learn a little more. I think anyone who's had a Tesla will attribute this to, you get in a Tesla and it'll tell you you have 280 miles of range, and 165 miles down the road you're stopping to charge. And the rated what the rated battery said and what you arrive with, there seems to always be a little magical difference that goes away. Now, I obviously speed and so forth do take into that, but the Macan speaks exactly to that. I was on highway rated speeds, 75 or higher, below 20 degrees, very windy, and it was accurate to what it said it was going to do. Where I don't
Nice.
always feel that so much with some of the other vehicles.
Is range an important factor to you when you looking at an EV?
I don't think like it's not the first thing I look at. I obviously don't. I don't want to be stopping every every so many miles, but we travel back between Pennsylvania and Alabama multiple times a year. Um, and I've seen from having driven, we've taken my wife's old Model X, which she had before her R1S, and the Cybertruck, and we've gone back and forth multiple times, and it tends to work out well. I'm one where after 2.5 hours of driving, I'm ready to stretch my legs and back and go to the bathroom and get a drink. And we usually have our dog with us, so having him being able to get a little exercise is always good. It's always worked out. Like, I don't think I need 500 miles of range. I know I've run into people who are like, I'll buy an EV when I can go 500, 600 miles on a charge. And I explain to them, I really don't think you need that. If you look at what your actual typical driving are, and I get well, you can fill up in 5 minutes at a gas tank. And I'm said to him, yes, and you stand out there in the cold pumping the thing or whatever. Then you leave your car, you go in, you go to the bathroom, you get your drink, you get your snack, you get whatever you need to get moved around, kids or whatever, and then you get back in the car. And I think if you start actually really timing how long you're stopping for, you're going to realize you're stopping much longer than you think you are. And so for me, I've looked at it like pull into whether it's a Sheets or whatever that's a stops, and they have a Tesla charger or another EV charger. Start the charger, and I walk away from the car, put the car in pet mode for the dog, and can take my time getting a coffee or using the restroom or stretching the legs. And by the time I'm ready to go, the car is almost always ready before I am. There's been a couple instances where you've gotten busy chargers or something like that, or so forth, but not too much. It hasn't really interfered.
And with all this traveling and miles of driving, I imagine you've had your fair share of experiences with public and private DC fast charging networks.
Yes.
With Tesla expanding the supercharging network, and of course, vehicles like Porsche will be getting access later this year. We have Rivian that has access now. CCS1 versus the North American charging standard, J3400. From your perspective, how necessary is this?
I wouldn't. I've said to everyone I know who's a friend that talks about getting an EV that everybody's first EV should be a Tesla. And the reason I say that is it makes it just so easy, from the route planning to the integration of everything, and just you plug in, it always works. There's plenty of stations. You're not going to have a bad. You're probably not going to have a bad experience. You graduate from that and want to maybe try some different vehicles. There's a huge amount of advantage to vehicles that have access to the Tesla supercharger network. I think it brings a sense of more ease when you're driving and not stressing as much as to whether or not, as we know from EA and the EV Goes and all the others, at some point or time we've all experienced a broken equipment or a derated charger, and this just happened to me on the last trip I was telling you about, visiting my son in Philadelphia, that we did round trip. I drove by an EA station and just to see what it was like in his area, and there were 6 cars charging, and there were 5 queuing to wait for charging, and
Mm.
that's going to hurt EV adoption if we can't figure out a way to get better, more plentiful infrastructure, and equipment that's going to be functioning on a regular basis. I would like to see more level twos in areas where they make sense. I think, shopping areas and places, or movie theaters or restaurants or places where people are going to be out. I think level twos would really maybe offload some of that if it was just more abundant, where you're going out for the evening, and you stop at the garage and you plug it in, and you go to the movie theater or dinner, drinks, and you come back and your car's gain some charge to it. I think that will help at some point in time if we can get there as well.
Yeah. Um, Kind of going into the fleet of EVs you've had and currently
Mhm.
have, what are your sights on for other EVs that you may be looking at?
I had recently borrowed, I have a friend who's a dealer and has access to some dealerships. And I recently had gotten to play with a Hummer EV truck, and
Nice.
it it's just insanely cool. I can't even. I mean, it's not practical. It doesn't make any sense. But you once you drive one, then you're like, this is really really cool. So that may be on the horizon, especially for our place at the beach, to be able to take the rooftops off and kind of keep it there as a kind of a summer rig, so to speak. I keep
Nice.
talking to myself that I'm going to own a Lucid at some point, um, and I think that will happen. I just don't know when. But I'm very impressed with the packaging and design and the efficiency of the motors. And we kind of touched on that a little earlier as to what types of things are you looking for, and seeing the engineering on the Lucid side focusing on squeezing every little bit out of it is interesting to me. I know there's some limitations with the software. I think Gravity has definitely improved. I know some Air owners that, especially the early ones, I know out of Spec Dave had some challenges with that, with his Air. So but it seems like it's getting better. I guess is what I'm saying. So I think at some point I'll dip my toe in that water.
Awesome. And on the question of these other EV companies or car companies as a whole, are there any car companies that you're looking forward to that may not currently be in production or that are in the prototype phase?
I love Polestar. I love the ethos of the brand and the design language. Thus, I own a Polestar 1. I did have a reservation for a Polestar 4 that I ended up canceling because they were supposed to be coming out with they're going to be delivering this year, but I got an email from them saying that they would no longer, that they weren't going to be delivering the performance for package version this year. And I had just gotten the Macan, and I was like, they're about similar size, about the same thing. And I was like, well, I'll wait. And the preset concept, which is going to be the Polestar 5, I have seen videos of, the actual debut of the car on stage and so forth like that, and some of the videos associated with it, and that car really speaks to me. It might be a Model S Plaid replacement someday. If that car comes out, it's supposed to have insane charging. I've seen some really really nutsy tests, not as nutsy as some of the ones that I know Kyle just did from his trip to China, but they're planning on that car being something special, I think.
Nice. So yeah, you seem like a Polestar guy in a sense.
I like the ethos of Polestar. I think the design language really speaks to me a lot. Obviously, there's people that like either don't love the whole Volvo brand and don't know where Polestar is going to go. But I kind of fell in love with the Polestar 1, not just because of his looks. I think it's one of the most beautiful cars around. But I like the cleverness of the car. I like the hybrid. You can drive that car on a legitimate pretty much 70 miles of pure EV, or you can put it in hybrid, or you can put it in the power mode and get both rear electric motors and the front turbocharged, supercharged engine, and really light the tires up if you want. So it's a really cool car. The other thing is there aren't that many of them. They only produce 500 a year for 3 years, and my understanding is the last year I don't think they kind of did the full run, and so it's amazing when I drive that car. I get stopped at stoplights or by people and go, "That car's great. That's beautiful. What is it?" And I'm like, "It's Polestar." Okay, who makes it? Polestar. So so to that's a car I'll probably keep for a long time. That one lands in the collection of some of the other ones that are in the forever garage, so to speak.
I'm sure you get that question a lot between all the many EVs that you have. What is that? What is it's this company. It's
It happens, yes, quite a lot. I've noticed the weird thing was over time. I had it with the R1T, going to a grocery store, and I got stopped by a woman who was had no idea it was even electric, and wanted to know the company, and spent quite a bit of time talking to her about it. And then the Cybertruck, when we first got those, you couldn't go anywhere without people wanting to talk to you, and it's still that way even today. I The other day I had two truck guys wanted to. You mind if we just look in the inside and look at the bed and all the rest of it, and they're interested. So I kind of look at it as one of my goals to kind of help, along as I always take as much time as I can with someone who wants to look at one, or ask questions, or and obviously we all get the typical question of, well, how far does it go on a charge, and how long does it take to charge? That's always question one in one.
yeah.
So, but
Some
trying to encourage EV adoption, I think, is part of what I'm hoping to do as well.
Yeah, I imagine with all the EVs you've had, you've gotten quite a bit of opportunities to speak to all various types of people. On the side of like referrals, do you have a lot of those?
I don't push referrals. I don't need them. So I know there are plenty of folks like yourself, and Rivian Tracker and Brandon Flash and Kyle and others that are out there that are really doing a lot of good work in the YouTube sphere, and social media. And I'd rather see those go to you guys. I can afford them. I don't need to take referrals from other people. So when I refer them, I always like, just, hey, look, if you need to take money off, here's somebody I know. Use one of theirs.
Sweet. Something I admire about you is, right, you have all these EVs, and I'm a car enthusiast by heart. I love
Mhm.
electrification, but you also own a Porsche 911.
Mhm. I have a
And yeah, kind of expanding into the more sporty and road track focused EVs that we may be getting in the future. I guess what would you be looking for in an electric vehicle that really takes on the jack of all trades that the 911 is?
Well, I think we've got to figure out weight, for sports cars to become fully blown EVs. Uh, the Ionic 5 is a really fun, cool car, and it goes around the corners like what's on rails. The Model 3 performance is really awesome as well. But even still, you're going to have a weight penalty with those vehicles that you're not going to have in the typical, what I call, more dedicated sports platforms of a Porsche 911, or a McLaren, or a Corvette, or what we associate with more of that sports car, supercar enthusiast stuff. I think until we can figure out the weight with the batteries a little more, it's going to be a challenging part of the area of the industry.
Are you excited for I mean, this is still kind of up in the air from Porsche, but the 718 EV, the Cayman
Hmm.
EV?
Yes.
Okay. I
Yeah,
imagine that's piqued your interest.
it has, and I'm interested to see it when it comes out. It's definitely one I've been following. I love Porsche. I always have. I think they make some of the best driving cars around. So I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see what comes out. I'm also excited to see the new Mercedes smaller sedan that they've been working on, that's supposed to be coming. I can't remember the name of it, but I've seen a couple of teaser videos of it, and it looks interesting.
Yeah. I think the electric CLA.
That's it.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think they're looking at it kind of as a Model 3 type competitor, and everyone will jump on here. There is no such competitor to the Model 3. It is. It's hard to argue. The Model 3 is such a great car. It's such a great car. Just like I think Rivian is like makes the best of. If you're looking for everything in an EV, truck or SUV, I think Rivian does a tremendous job.
Getting into electric vehicles. So your first EV was the Ford Lightning.
Mhm.
How did you get into the electric? vehicle game? What piqued your interest?
I was researching, I think I was researching the Ford Bronco Raptor was going to be coming out. And I was looking at some different stuff, and somehow I got onto EV trucks. I think the Lightning was had just come out, and Rivian was coming out, and I was doing the traditional, like, well, I'd like the truck. That's kind of cool. Like maybe electric. Let's see what it's like. Watched a bunch of different stuff, and you know, I at the time, I think Rivian was still too new for me, and I didn't know enough about the EV game. And so I was like, well, I got to stick with the traditional automaker, Ford. They make trucks, and so I decided to go with the Lightning, and it's a great truck. It was such a I think we kind of look now because the pace of progress happens so fast in the EV market that we tend to look at the Lightning now as like this way dated EV or not as on par as like a Cybertruck or a Rivian,
Mhm.
or the Scouts coming out or some of the others. But if you look at what Ford did with that truck, it's a great vehicle. I mean, they didn't compromise much in the way of any kind of styling for people that were natural trucks. That was also one of the things I wasn't sure. Like, well, am I going to be associated as one of these like green people or EV nerds or whatever that and so when I got the truck, it was like you could still blend in with a Ford F1 Lightning. But when you looked at what it could do in terms of that, the front was massive. The onboard power that you could do with it, the amount of room interiorly, the fit and finish of the vehicle was extremely well. The biggest knockdown is the software. And they were trying to improve. I know they've had iterations of improving it, and they did do software updates over the air. They were never Tesla level over the air updates. They were tweak a little thing here, tweak a little thing there. But I think they're great trucks. They do what a pickup truck needs to do. If you're just looking for a well-rounded pickup truck for your business or around town, and you want onboard power and lots of room, it's a fantastic truck. And then we get into the stuff when we start comparing things like R1Ts and Cyber trucks and all the craziness that those vehicles can do. Um, yeah, it just it kind of that's how I started with the Lightning.
That's nice. I think a lot of people in the electric, well, just the automotive sector as a whole, we focus on the high end, high performance cars.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those regular, in a sense, vehicles and EVs that serve a great purpose,
Mm-hmm.
have great range, decent power, they are a well rounded car. We tend to overlook those, and you can get a lot of good deals on the Ford Lightning.
No, you can, and I know the one thing everyone talks about is the depreciation rate with EVs, and we touched on that a little bit earlier, and I think some of that has to do with the adoption curve. I think because of the fact that a lot of us earlier adopters or second wave adopters, we're all interested in the latest, greatest, newest. And what would typically happen, for instance, with my ICE cars, when I would trade them in, the next buyer would come in and it would drop, but it wouldn't drop dramatically. It would drop down because there was another buyer there. I think the used market buyer pool on EVs is just not there yet,
Yeah.
to the level that it needs to be to keep pricing high enough. I think there's some early adopters that are taking advantage of used EV prices, and that's fantastic. But we're still not getting some of those enough of a mass market yet, that the used EV prices are stable or stable, I guess. And I don't know if that's because us early adopters, we trade out of them and go to the latest and greatest, newest, and then the people who maybe look at it and go, well, that's not good as the one that's out now, so I'll wait for that one. And so the question marks. But I mean, right now, anyone out there who needs a pickup truck, that wants a Ford Lightning or looks at a Ford Lightning today, and you get a low mileage one of those. I mean, you get a steal. There's steals on the used market right now. So yeah, I think we do tend to look so much to the future, we kind of forget some of the use cases and where we could get with some of the lower price. That's why when I hear everyone saying, "Well, all the manufacturers are making high end, expensive EVs. Where are all the affordable EVs?" I'm like, have you looked on the used market? The used market is crazy with some great deals. And I don't know if it's because people are nervous, going, well, I don't want to use EV because I don't know how the battery is, or I don't know how it was charged, or is it going to be? Did they get rid of it because it wasn't working right? And I think those stigmas got to figure a way around. I know. There's the one company, Recurrent, I guess, is doing battery health
Yeah.
studies on stuff. It would be great to see some sort of system like that gets utilized a little more, so it makes the used buyer feel a little more comfortable.
What do you think needs to happen for us to see EV adoption as a whole kind of take over? Because we talked about the used EV market, and I think that used EV market will slowly trickle down if we see the entire market as a whole increase and
Mhm.
buyers be more interested. What do you think that takes?
I obviously think we need charging. We need to have more charging and in more locations. I think one of the things that gets focused on is, well, we need to put in 100 chargers in LA or wherever in this area. But then you go out to smaller rural communities or the places in the middle. There's like it's very hit and miss. And I think we need to fill in some of those gaps in the country, of where EV chargers are and that they're working and that they can keep up capacity with the number of drivers arriving at stations. I look at it from having had it happen to me where I was in a queuing system and there were three other EVs there. I needed to charge for 4 minutes, less than 5 minutes. I just, for whatever reason, the Macan said stop here for 5 minutes. And I mean, literally, all I wanted was 5 minutes worth of juice, but that stop took 35 minutes for a spot to open and get in. And that's the kind of thing I think that's going to hurt if we don't figure out a way to increase, charging networks. I know Iona is very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to checking out some of their sites. And hopefully Tesla continues to upgrade their units to the V4s, and we get the solid charging that we need in the U.S. Um, I kind of look at EV adoption to me as similar to like iPhone adoption. There seemed to be a period of time where there were the early adopters with the iPhone, and you'd see a couple of people using them, and everybody's like, it's just a toy or whatever. And then like it slowly started going, and then one day you looked up and everybody was buying, smartphones. And I got a feeling that's going to happen with EVs because I'm starting to see people that I know who I know someone that is a neighbor that basically was never going to get an EV and just bought their first one. So I think people are getting exposed to them. The more that people see them, get into them, see their friends use them, not going, well, Bob drove an EV and he was stranded on Interstate
Mm.
95 and ran out of battery. And when they don't see those stories happen, I think people get interested. And I think you start to get into um, all the positives of an EV: no oil changes, less maintenance. You can have the cabin preconditioning and not have it spewing fumes out while you're heating your car up in the winter. You come home, you plug it in, and you forget about it till the next morning. And you go out and you unplug it, and you get in and go where you're going. And don't even think about stopping at a gas station. I mean, I think those things will continue to um, grow adoption as people hear more and more, and you start to get into people. Like I went from jumping into it pretty solidly to then getting my wife into driving an EV. And two of my sons are now EV drivers. My one son bought a Model 3, the other one bought a used Model S long range, and the only one is my daughter's the only one. She's still a Jeep, one of the Jeep girls. So I don't know if she'll ever give that one up. She might get an EV as a second car someday, but she's not giving up her Jeep.
The Jeep appreciation runs
Yeah.
deep. Soon we'll have those electric Jeeps too.
Yes.
Now, kind of touching on something we spoke about earlier, your Polestar 1 plug-in
Mhm.
hybrids, 40% of EVs sold in China, and I think China is really a model market that people
Mhm.
look at for EVs, are plug-in hybrids.
Mhm.
How do you see plug-in hybrids taking a part of not only your buyer's experience, but electrification as a whole?
Well, when I got my Polestar one, it wasn't so much. I wasn't looking for the hybrid part of it because it's going to be a backup for me. I looked at it just because the technology of that car was really cool and it was clever on how it works and how the engineering went into it. My feeling on hybrids or revs or whatever we're calling them down the road is that I question if they're going to be more problematic than solution based. I
Yeah.
can see it obviously, especially like in the towing capacity. Kyle's brought this up as like a use case, and some of the others have, where an EV that you can fill, like an EV truck that you can also
Mm.
have a gasoline motor working to recharge the battery for trucks. I see that as a real positive, or for long distance things. The issue I question is if people use them the way they're supposed to use them, and 90% of the time they're plugging them in as a EV around town and using them, and then that 10% of the time they go on a longer trip and they want to use the gasoline engine. Does the gasoline engine have problems because it hasn't been getting exercised and used? And that's coming from me as an ICE person that noticed when I always had ICE, vehicles and collections. If you don't drive them and you don't circulate the oil and the fluids and all the rest of the things that go in an engine, they tend to become problematic over time the longer they sit. So that's one of the questions. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to pan out or how that's going to work. It to me it's more of a safety thing for drivers who are like wanting to make the EV conversion but are like scared they're going to be stuck on the side of the road, that they always know they can go to a gas station with a hybrid. But we'll see. I don't know. It sounds like the automakers want to head that way. Some of them, I think it may be a mistake for them. It seems like they're bouncing around, especially the legacy ones, where it seems as though Tesla and Rivian and Lucid are full on and into the EV side, as well as the EGMP cars from Hyundai and Kia. That they don't seem to be looking back, and I question the legacy automakers that are going to kind of, they're not sure what they want to do, so they're kind of doing a little of everything, and
Mhm.
that it may end up damaging them down the road in 10 years.
Yeah, that's a good point. The reliability in just engines as a whole, not you said circulating the oils and the
Yeah.
fluids. Electric vehicle reliability. Have you had any problems with your EVs?
We had our first experience with an EV problem.
Okay.
My wife's Gen 2 Rivian R1S tri-motor, she picked up in December, and in January, taking my daughter to the airport to fly back to college. On the way home, it through all these error codes and basically just bricked completely, that it needed to be towed. I had to drive down and pick her up, and they took it. And Rivian took it to their service center, and we were in communication with them. They were really very communicative. They called us pretty much every other day or every day, updating us as to what was going on. There was a lot of testing back and forth with the factory, and ultimately, they were seeing some readings with the front drive unit that was not correct, and decided that the front drive unit needed to be replaced. And they did that. And then they decided to replace the rear units as I was told, out of an abundance of caution. Um, Knock on wood, we haven't had any problems since. They were very good about it. They delivered the vehicle back to us on a flatbed. They threw some nice Rivian swag in, gave us a credit to use for the time usage that we were out the vehicle. Now, granted, it was a brand new vehicle that had less than 800 miles on it when we had the problem. So it shook my wife for a moment.
Yeah.
So she's kind of getting back in love with Bluebell, and we'll see if how she does between here and Alabama in the next couple of days as we head out.
Nice. Do you name all of your EVs?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We've fallen in that trap of
Let's hear them.
let's see. the my R1T is Walt because it's a white R1T, and there were some jokes about the color being cocaine white. So mine
Right.
is Walter White, Walt from Breaking Bad. The Cyber Beast is Tars from Interstellar. If anyone knows that reference, the movie, the robot from that movie. Model S Plaid is got a boring name. We just call him Blue. Um, her old Model X Plaid that was um, red, we called Scarlet. Um, Miss Scarlet was her name. Trying to think what else. The Lightning was Lightning McQueen.
Okay.
Obviously, I don't have a name for the Macan yet. That's the only one that I haven't come up with. But it's always fun. It's something to talk about and throw names around and kind of give it its own little personality. It makes it difficult though, because then you feel like you're parting with a family friend versus an
Right.
individual when you do move on from them.
Yeah, it could create some personification with the EV, and then it goes, and it's
Yeah.
saying goodbye to a family member.
Yes, it is very much so. It's kind of fun.
Now, you talked about the most well-rounded EVs and Tesla as a whole, and I think that's very true. I know I mentioned Tesla on this channel, either good or bad.
Mhm.
Everyone has a problem.
Yes.
But have you had a lot of experiences with the, um, I would say I guess the cheaper, less well-defined electric vehicles? And if you had to pick just one today, kind of disregarding all of our R1Ts and our Cyber Beasts and our EQS AMGs,
Mhm.
just a regular daily, what would that be?
I think it's been said a million times. I don't think you can beat the value of the Model 3. I think for what you get for that car and the price point of it, it's hard to beat it. I love the Ionic 5. I think it's one of the cooler cars out there, and it does a lot of stuff well. It's lacking on the software side. Um, pretty badly. I know they're trying to fix it, but the new ones are coming out with NACS built right to NACS. So I think if it was me and there was one of them, it really comes down to if you are okay with Tesla. A Model 3 is you can't beat the price of the thing with it. If it was, well, I for whatever reason don't want to go the Tesla route. I think the EGMP cars are pretty good. I'm hearing a lot of really good things from Equinox owners from the Chevy side. So I think there's a lot of good things coming and stuff that people can get into even if they aren't looking at the high end level of EVs.
And kind of bringing in more of those premium EVs, what would you pick as your just one and done?
Oh, that's so hard. That is so. That's a really tough question. Um, you know, I'd probably stay with the Model S Plaid as like if you said I can only have one because it does so much with
It does.
the room. I can go on a long trip, put a lot of stuff in there, and I'm good. I can go out with another couple for dinner, and there's plenty of space and room in the back seat. If I want to go out and hoon it up with it, I can have a lot of fun in that car. The software is amazing, so it's still hard to say no to that. And I always said if my rule was if I had to decide and it was a two-car solution, it would be a Model S Plaid and a Rivian R1T. So that would be
There you
my,
go.
my if you limited me to two, that would be it. Um,
And if EVs are, we're gonna wrap it up here. I don't want to take forever of your time, but if EVs weren't as exciting and we have so many options today, what gas cars do you think you would be driving?
oh wow, that'd be it. You know, now, um, I don't know the Porsche Panamera is pretty cool. I've always been like a Mercedes guy. I love the model. I love the S Class. It's like a great car. From a sportiness standpoint out there right now, I know the Corvette, the new E-Ray is kind of neat. Although that's a hybrid again.
Right.
I don't know. Like there isn't really a lot. I still watch a lot of other auto reviews of internal combustion cars, and not a lot excites me. I'll hear like this performance figure, and I'll be like, ooh, like like it's 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds, and I'm like, yeah, all
Right.
right. No, so I don't know. I think I've kind of I've kind of moved past that. There's some other reasons I think I've kind of moved past it. I think getting into the EV space, some of not just the positives of, lower maintenance, easier costs, convenience of home charging. Um, but I do think, I have 4 kids and I'm 54 now, and I'm starting to think about my kids and my potential grandkids down the road, and what kind of things we're leaving them, and whether or not people want to get into the whole climate change or whatnot. I do look at things where you notice in cities when you're walking around and the big bus comes by and the gas cloud comes and you see
Mhm.
people coughing and things like that, and I look at people who have asthma or health issues, and I'm like, this is such a better technology. Why go for that if this is a better technology? We could make our lives a lot healthier and better by moving to EV adoption as a more useful thing. Whether it's like, obviously, I know there's people who thinks it affects the planet. I don't know. I'm not going to argue. I'm not a scientist. I can just look at what I see on a day-to-day basis and going, I don't necessarily think sitting in traffic with a bunch of black smoke coming out of cars is probably good for us when we tell people not to smoke cigarettes. So maybe we should look at it more from a standpoint of benefit to our lifestyles. I don't know about you, but I'd rather be able to walk around in a big city and not have a lot of noise from internal combustion engines and a lot of breathing foul air. So I think that's one of the areas where I think I'd like to see things happen as people start to um, get the political football of EVs out of their mind. Just about, it's a
Right.
better product, it's a better solution.
Right. I think that's exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that. Whenever people bring up the social or politics of electrification, I've always remind myself like I didn't get my R1T because it's an electric car or
Mhm.
I'm forcing an electric car. I got it because as a car and product itself, it's a lot better than a lot of, I would say, every pretty much every gas option out there, and
Mhm.
that goes for pretty much every other EV. And so, this for those watching and listening. Whenever someone brings up the social side of it, just kind of bring up the benefits. No oil changes, right? No transmission. There's just so much. No gas stations. It's a lot easier
Yeah.
to be with an EV than a gas car. But I'll
And I know I'm very much similar in the sense of, like I got from Kyle, is the reason I got into EVs was not from a social aspect. I got into EVs because they were cool. They were
right.
fast. I know like the early EVs, some of them were a little smaller and they didn't do much and stuff. But as the technology's gotten, it's, if you're a car person or you're an auto enthusiast, you want to go fast. There's nothing better
Yeah.
than an EV. There's just nothing. You can't keep up. I don't care. You could put the fastest ice engine out there, and I'll still toast you in a in a Model S Plaid or a Lucid Sapphire. So
It's safe to say you're EV from now on. This is like, I mean,
yeah.
it's so far right from your fleet that I could say that, but
Mhm.
you're in it for EVs in the long term.
Yeah, I won't go backwards. I like, I'll keep my 911 for a day where maybe I want to go out in the countryside and experience that feeling every so often. But it's going to be more of a Saturday morning thing, and the Polestar one, like I said, probably 80% of the time I drive that in pure EV range. So I don't see myself ever buying another internal combustion car. Let's put it that way. The two I have are the two that I'll keep, but I won't ever buy another one, and I don't drive them there often. Those are more collector cars that are like a nice sunny day. You want to take them out and have some fun with them, go to a car show, something like that. But I just think the EV is a better technology.
It's awesome. Now, I just want to say thank you, Michael. I've
Oh, glad to.
getting your perspective, right? Someone who's had so much experience with um, EVs as a whole from different brands and makes and models. Where can people find you if they want to follow you somewhere?
I'm on X, Michael /L Roush, Rauch. I have a pretty good following of folks there that we all communicate. It's that's one of the other things that other thing I guess you would mention too about the EVs. The EV community is a bunch of really cool people. They're extremely tech savvy. They're and very accepting and very friendly. That's one of the things I experienced very early on from when I had an issue with figuring out something on my Rivian R1T, and Jose from Rivian Tracker was like the first one who reached out and helped me with stuff. So there's lots of really good resources and awesome people like yourself and the rest of the Out of Spec crew.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Glad
Thank
to.
you.
Thank you for
Awesome. Yeah, it was my pleasure. Of course, I'll have Michael's info in the description as well. If you guys have any interesting EV stories, EV experiences, maybe you own a million more EVs than Michael, let us know. Feel free to email us. That will be in the description. But again, thank you so much for joining me, Michael. This is the Out of Spec podcast. My name is Isaiah, and I will see you guys in the next one.